The alarm buzzed at 4:45 a.m., like it did every morning, shrill and cruel. I slapped it off and lay still for a few seconds, listening to the quiet hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of our ancient apartment walls. The ceiling above our bed was stained from a leak that had never been fixed. But I didn't have the luxury of staring at it long. I swung my legs over the edge and started my day. The diner was cold when I arrived. My fingers ached as I filled ketchup bottles and lined up sugar packets. The scent of old grease clung to everything, and no matter how often I washed my uniform, it always smelled faintly of hash browns and burnt coffee. But tips were decent during the morning rush, and every dollar counted. Nathan's tuition bill for the quarter had just come in, and I'd done the math last night twice. We were short. Again. I plastered on a smile and served eggs and bacon to grumpy commuters who barely looked me in the eye. I memorized their orders, offered free refills without being asked, and ignored the ache in my back. By noon, I was off to the warehouse job, loading and stacking boxes in the basement of a discount furniture store. It wasn't glamorous. The manager called me kid, even though I was 28. He said it like it was affectionate, but I knew better. To him, I was temporary labor. Interchangeable. Invisible. By the time my Uber shift began at 6 p.m., I was running on fumes. I kept granola bars in the glove compartment and sipped water instead of grabbing dinner. Every meal skipped meant another $10 that could go toward textbooks or gas. My father's watch, his old, scratched Timex, had already been pawned last month to make up for a shortfall. I didn't tell Nathan. I just said I lost it. He didn't ask questions. He was always tired when I got home, eyes red from studying. He'd murmur a thank you as I handed him whatever I picked up from the takeout place with the $2 specials. Then he'd disappear behind his textbooks. "This is all temporary," he used to say, kissing my forehead. "Once I'm a doctor, we'll never struggle again. I'll take care of everything." And I believed him. I believed in the both of us. In what we were building. 6 years of this. 6 years of saying no to myself so he could say yes to his dream. I stopped buying new clothes. I cut my own hair in the mirror with kitchen scissors. I made friends with the women at the food pantry. I lied to my mother and told her things were fine because she had her own worries and didn't need mine. The only time I cried was in the shower. That way the tears could disappear with the steam and the water. That way no one would know, not even me, sometimes. And still, I kept going. I made spreadsheets to track every cent. I fought with landlords over broken heaters and patched holes in the wall with leftover tape from shipping boxes. I painted over mold with cheap primer. I taught myself how to fix a leaky faucet with YouTube and borrowed tools. I became a master of making do. Sometimes I'd imagine the future, Nathan in a white coat, me in the crowd clapping wildly. A small house, maybe a backyard. Dinners at a table instead of over a cardboard box. I'd work less. Maybe go back to school. Maybe even travel. Just once. I'd earned that much, right? He always told me I was strong. That I was the reason he could do this. That he'd never forget what I gave up for him. But even as I kept giving, there were things I didn't say. Like how lonely it felt when he stopped laughing with me. How he no longer noticed when I wore makeup or stayed up just to eat with him. How I missed the man who used to bring home flowers just because. I chalked it up to stress. Medical school was hard. Marriage was hard. I told myself that love sometimes went quiet for a while. I just had to wait for it to speak again. One night, I found a receipt in the pocket of his coat. A restaurant I didn't recognize. A bottle of wine more expensive than anything we could afford. 2 entrees. No explanation. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. I pushed it deep into the trash and deeper into the back of my mind. I told myself it must have been for a study group or a mentor. Anything but what I feared. Because if I let myself believe that this sacrifice wasn't shared, if I let myself believe I was alone in it, then everything I gave up would start to look like a mistake. And I couldn't afford that. Not yet. Not after 6 years. Not when graduation was just around the corner. The auditorium pulsed with excitement. Camera flashes, polished shoes echoing against marble floors, the rustle of gowns. I stood in the back of it all, clutching my purse like it was the only thing tethering me to the moment. It was finally here. Nathan's graduation. The day we'd talked about for years, dreamed about through all those sleepless nights and ramen dinners. I'd imagined it so many times, but the real thing still knocked the breath from my lungs. Rows of proud families filled the seats. Mothers dabbing tears. Fathers with camcorders. Friends cheering. I didn't mind not having a seat. Standing felt fitting somehow. I'd been standing behind him for years. Tonight just made it official. My heels pinched and my stomach growled from skipping lunch again, but none of it mattered. I watched as Nathan stepped across the stage in his cap and gown, the deep navy fabric making him look even taller than usual. I reached for my phone to take a picture, hands trembling slightly. That was him. My Nathan. The boy I'd met in community college. The man I'd built a life with, threadbare as it was. The one I believed in more than I believed in anything. He beamed as he accepted his diploma. I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. I didn't care that my dress was last season or that my makeup was a little faded from rushing after my Uber shift. I was here. He was graduating. We made it. After the ceremony, a faculty member stepped up to the podium to introduce the top graduate to give a short speech. And of course, it was Nathan. My heart swelled. I leaned in, proud and flushed. He adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat, and smiled in that easy, charming way that made people love him instantly. First, I want to thank everyone for being here today. Becoming a doctor has been the hardest thing I've ever done. I couldn't have done it without the unwavering support of someone very special. My hand instinctively moved to my chest. He was going to say my name. I felt the tears building. Nathan's eyes scanned the crowd, and then he smiled again. But it wasn't at me. It was toward the front row. My wife, Isabel. She's the reason I'm here today. Applause. I didn't hear it. Not really. Not above the sudden rush of blood in my ears, the way my breath snagged painfully in my throat. Wife? Isabel? No. No, I must have misheard. I had to have misheard. He stepped down from the stage and joined a woman I had never seen before, a tall brunette in a sleek red dress. She wrapped her arms around him like she belonged there, like she'd always belonged there. They kissed. Lightly, easily. As if there were no secrets. As if there had never been anyone else. I took a step back, nearly tripping over someone's bag. The crowd shifted and swayed, but I stood still, paralyzed. Had he really said that? Did he mean it? Was this some kind of cruel mistake? I waited for him to find me, to look around, realize his error, and call out to me. But he didn't. He walked through the crowd with Isabel at his side, hand resting gently on her lower back. Smiling, laughing. I felt like I was watching someone else's life unfold. Someone else's betrayal. I turned, bumping into a woman with a corsage, and murmured an apology, barely able to hear myself speak. I stumbled outside, into the sharp air, trying to breathe past the rising panic in my chest. That's when I heard him again, his voice floating behind me, casual and confident. She's just a friend who helped out during school. I froze. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to believe it, but I did. Lena found me in the parking lot, my hands braced on the trunk of someone's car like I might collapse. Her face was pale, eyes wide with horror. Elena. I swear to you, I didn't know. I thought you two were still together. I didn't even know about Isabel until this week. He told Mom not to mention anything. I'm so sorry. I nodded, numb. I wasn't angry at Lena. She looked like she wanted to throw up. I thought maybe I heard him wrong, I whispered. But I didn't, did I? No, she said quietly, tears shining in her eyes. You didn't. It was like something cracked inside me, something too deep to name. I had built my entire existence around him. Every job, every skipped meal, every sacrificed dream, it had all been for Nathan. For us. And now, just like that, I was erased. Not even as an ex. Not even with dignity. I was downgraded to a footnote. A helper. A favor. A ghost. And the worst part? He didn't even look back. I straightened slowly, the sting in my throat giving way to something colder. Something sharper. My hands stopped trembling. I had spent 6 years trying to make him shine. But he had just disappeared me. The days that followed felt like walking through fog with no sense of direction, just this numbing chill that wouldn't leave my bones. I woke up and still packed lunches for shifts I didn't have the strength to show up for. My body moved through the motions like it didn't realize my world had caved in. And everywhere I went, Nathan's voice echoed in my head. She's just a friend who helped out during school. Friend. After 6 years. After sacrificing everything. I kept thinking, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe Isabel was someone else. Maybe wife was a slip. Maybe there was a reason, a story I didn't know yet, something I could make sense of. But I couldn't lie to myself any longer, not after what I saw. Not after what I heard with my own ears. And definitely not after what Lena confirmed. I met Lena at a little cafe near the hospital, one of those spots where the music was too upbeat for the mood I carried in my chest. She had already ordered us tea, her fingers nervously wrapping and unwrapping a napkin as I slid into the booth across from her. "Elena," she started, her voice cracking. "I can't believe this. I swear to you, I thought he was still with you. He shut us all out after second year. I should have pushed. I should have asked." I shook my head. "This isn't your fault." "He lied to everyone," she continued, eyes wide with disbelief. "To Mom. To his classmates. To you. And now he's just pretending you never existed?" I nodded, forcing the words out. "He rewrote the story." That's exactly what it felt like someone had stolen my part in a play I helped write. He had taken all the years I gave him, all the tears, the exhaustion, the devotion, and deleted me. Edited me out of his version like I was just a blurry face in the background. And Isabel? She got the spotlight. The applause. The credit. "I saw them," I said, my voice small. He kissed her. She had the smile like she belonged there. Like I never did. Lena clenched her jaw. "He's a coward. He didn't want to tell the truth because the truth makes him look bad. And God forbid anything tarnish his image right now." I looked down at my tea, barely sipping it. "Do you think she knows? Isabel?" "I doubt it," Lena muttered. "He probably fed her some story about a toxic friend who clung too hard. You know how he is. He spins things to make himself the victim." The thought made my stomach twist. I had given him everything. I had pawned the last thing my father gave me so he could buy his textbooks. I had begged landlords for extensions, picked up double shifts, skipped dinners so he wouldn't have to. And now, in the version he told the world, I was no one. Not even an afterthought. Just some friend who helped out. I bit my lip to stop it from trembling. "I don't know who I am without him." Lena reached across the table and took my hand. "You are the reason he made it through medical school. That's who you are. He didn't do it alone. He didn't build that future alone. You carried him." Her words stung because they were true. But they also lit something inside me, a flicker of defiance I hadn't felt in a long time. I'd been so busy surviving, so busy supporting, I hadn't let myself be angry. But it was there now, coursing through me like fire. I kept telling myself it was love, I whispered. That I was doing all this because I believed in him. And I did. But now I see it. He was okay letting me give and give as long as it served him. And when it didn't anymore, he replaced me. Lena's eyes filled again. "He doesn't deserve your silence. He doesn't deserve your grace." I nodded slowly, the words solidifying in my chest like stone. I won't be a ghost in my own story. When I left the cafe, I didn't cry. I walked through the city with my shoulders square, past billboards and honking cars and strangers with too much to do. The world didn't stop for my heartbreak. But something inside me had shifted. I went home and pulled out every receipt, every lease agreement, every wire transfer and bank statement. I laid it all out on the floor. I didn't plan on going to the party. At first, the thought of being in the same room as Nathan and Isabel made my skin crawl. But then I saw the invitation posted on Lena's fridge, bold and gilded. "Dr. Nathan Moore and Isabel Carrington invite you to a celebration of love and success. A catered rooftop event, champagne, string quartet, evening gowns. It felt like salt in a wound I hadn't even finished bandaging. He has no shame, I said, staring at it. Lena looked up from her tea. He really doesn't. But maybe you should go. I turned to her slowly. You want me to crash it? I want you to finish the story, she said simply. You've let him control the narrative. You've been silent, invisible. But you have receipts, Elena. You have the truth. And just like that, I knew. I couldn't just let him paint over me. I wasn't the supporting character in someone else's biography. I was the one who made that man's story possible. So I found a simple black dress in the back of my closet, classic, quiet, and sharp enough to make a point. I straightened my hair, did my makeup with care, and slipped the folder of documents into my bag. Not because I wanted drama, but because sometimes the truth needs its own stage. The rooftop glittered with fairy lights and clinking glasses. People in polished shoes and expensive dresses floated between cocktail tables, laughing too loudly. I felt every eye as I walked in, though no one recognized me, not yet. But he would. Oh, he would. I saw him before he saw me. Nathan in a tailored suit, grinning beside Isabel, who looked flawless in a shimmering navy gown. He had his arm around her waist, and for a second, the memory of his hand on my back during late-night library runs slammed into me. But I held my ground. When the music dipped and a toast was called for, Nathan took the mic with the same charm he always had, confident, smooth, comfortable in his skin. Thank you all for being here. It's been a long journey, and I couldn't have done it without Isabel. Her strength, her love, she's been my guiding light. People clapped. Glasses clinked. Isabel smiled with modest perfection. And that's when I stepped forward. I didn't need a microphone. My voice rang clear in the sudden hush as I walked up onto the platform beside him. Sorry to interrupt, I said, turning to face the crowd. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge someone else who made Nathan's journey possible. The room froze. Nathan blinked, recognition dawning with a flicker of panic. Isabel tilted her head, confused. My name is Elena Moore, I continued, and for 6 years, I worked 3 jobs to support Nathan while he attended medical school. I paid his tuition, his rent, his groceries. I skipped meals so he wouldn't have to. I pawned my late father's watch to cover his books. I pulled the folder from my bag and opened it. Here are bank statements showing deposits into his account. Rent agreements with my name on them. Tuition payments from my earnings. There's even a thank you note he wrote after I sold my car so he wouldn't have to defer a semester. I looked directly at Isabel. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here because for 6 years, I sacrificed everything while he built a future. And then one day, at his graduation, I learned he had rewritten our entire history. Called me a friend. Pretended I never existed. The room was dead silent. I'm not asking for pity, I said. Steady now. I just want you all to know the full story. Not the polished version Nathan likes to tell, but the one built on invisible labor and love that he outgrew. Nathan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked around like he'd just realized the walls were glass and everyone could see inside. I nodded once and stepped down. People parted as I walked by. A few looked away. Some stared. But no one said a word. Outside, the night air hit my face like a wave. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stood still for a moment, breathing. Then I heard someone behind me. Elena. It was Lena, breathless, eyes wide with awe. You did it. I didn't do it for revenge, I said quietly. I know, she replied. You did it for truth. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a voice. One that couldn't be edited out. One that echoed louder than any toast or title. He had tried to write me out. But I had just taken the pen back. It started with a single video. 32 seconds captured by someone's phone just as I stepped up to the microphone. I didn't even know it had been recorded until Lena texted me the next morning. You need to see this. It started with a single video, 32 seconds captured by someone's phone just as I stepped up to the microphone. I didn't even know it had been recorded until Lena texted me the next morning. You need to see this. I clicked the link half asleep, not expecting much. But there I was on screen, clear as day, voice steady as I exposed Nathan in front of a room full of donors, colleagues, and strangers. The camera caught every word. My name, my story, his betrayal. The expressions on their faces, shock, disbelief, quiet horror. By noon, it had over 100,000 views. By the end of the day, it had passed 1 million. People were reposting it with captions like, "She gave everything. He erased her," and hashtag Elena deserved better. Strangers flooded my inbox with messages, some sharing their own stories of being left behind, others just offering support. I'd never been seen like this before. Not by the world. Not even by myself. For years I had been invisible. Now, I was suddenly a symbol. News outlets picked it up. Medical grad's ex-wife reveals 6-year sacrifice during engagement party. Blogs ran think pieces. Podcasts dissected the layers of financial and emotional betrayal. One host said, "This is the kind of woman who keeps society functioning, and no one notices until she says enough." The words made me cry in the car outside the grocery store. Nathan's hospital released a vague statement about internal reviews and upholding professional standards. Rumors swirled about mentorships being withdrawn and grants paused. People were tagging his workplace on every post, demanding accountability. His once polished image had cracked under the weight of the truth. And Isabel's family? Social media found out who they were within hours. Her father, a high-profile attorney, closed his online profiles. Her mother took down their vacation blog. Suddenly, the perfect couple Nathan had tried to show the world had become a cautionary tale. It wasn't about vengeance. I didn't care about ruining reputations or burning anyone's life to the ground. I hadn't even planned for any of it to happen. But I wasn't sorry it had. Because for the first time, I felt the weight of 6 years begin to lift. Not because of the attention, but because people finally believed me. Lena came over that evening with takeout and a bottle of wine. "You're literally everywhere," she said, scrolling through her phone. TikTok, Instagram, news feeds, everyone is talking about you. People are calling you a modern-day Cinderella, except instead of a slipper, you dropped receipts. I laughed for the first time in days. It felt strange and sharp, like my lungs had forgotten how. "Do you think it's too much?" I asked. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." She shrugged. "You didn't ask for it. But maybe the world needed to hear you anyway." I thought about that long after she left. About how many women like me had labored in silence, built someone else's dream only to be discarded when it was convenient. Maybe I wasn't just telling my story. Maybe I was holding a mirror up to something much bigger. Still, I turned down interviews. Every outlet wanted my version, my face on a screen, a polished quote. But I wasn't interested in becoming a headline. I wasn't a victim to be paraded around for ratings. I just wanted to live again. Freely. On my terms. But even as I tried to go back to normal, I knew nothing would ever be the same. People recognized me now. At the diner, a customer left a note on his receipt that read, "You inspired my sister to walk away from her own Nathan." A woman on the street stopped me and whispered, "Thank you. You reminded me I matter." That meant more than any apology Nathan could ever give. I didn't know where this path would lead. But I knew one thing, I wasn't going back. Not to silence. Not to shadows. Not to sacrificing myself for someone who couldn't even say my name with respect. I had told the truth. And the world had listened. Now, it was time to figure out who I could become when I was no longer holding someone else up, but standing on my own. I stood in front of the chalkboard with dusty palms and a hammer tucked into the waistband of my jeans. The walls were still half-painted, the windows only just installed, and the floor smelled like sawdust and sweat. But it was mine. Every square foot of it. Mine. The Forge Collective wasn't flashy. It was a repurposed auto garage on the corner of a forgotten street, the kind of place most people passed without a second glance. But I'd walked by it 100 times during my late-night Uber shifts and thought, that place has bones. So when the landlord agreed to lease it cheap, I signed the papers with trembling hands and a gut full of nerves. I could have chased money. I could have gone on talk shows or sold my story to the highest bidder. But none of that felt right. None of it felt like healing. So I built something instead. The Forge was going to be a place for women like me. Women who had given until there was nothing left. Women who had been background characters in someone else's success story. We weren't going to stay invisible. We were going to learn how to weld, patch drywall, build budgets, change oil, prep for job interviews. Not because those skills made us more valuable, but because they reminded us we always had been. I remember the first day the door opened. 6 women walked in, each of them a little uncertain, a little guarded. Some were mothers. Some were recently single. Some had never held a drill or written a resume. But they showed up. And I greeted them with paint on my jeans and a smile I hadn't worn in months. "Welcome to the Forge," I said. "This place exists because I once forgot how strong I was. I don't want that to happen to you." We started with small things. Changing a tire. Writing a simple savings plan. Reading a lease agreement. Every lesson felt like a thread stitching us all back together. We weren't just learning skills, we were reclaiming dignity, voice, power, and word spread. Within 2 weeks, we had 20 women on the waiting list. Volunteers started offering their time, an accountant who taught financial literacy, a retired mechanic who brought in engines to practice on, a lawyer who walked us through employment rights. None of them asked for anything in return. They just believed in the mission. I kept my head down and worked. I painted signs. I mopped floors. I wrote lesson plans late at night with a mug of weak coffee beside me. It was exhausting. But it was mine. No one could erase it. No one could call it a favor. No one could take credit for it but the women who showed up day after day. And slowly, people began to notice. A city councilwoman stopped by one afternoon, curious after hearing about us from a constituent. She stayed for 3 hours. A week later, she called and offered a grant. "I think what you're building here is exactly what this city needs," she said. "Practical tools. Real empowerment. It's gritty. And it's brilliant." I didn't cry until after I hung up. I still lived in the same apartment. The walls still flaked and the faucet still leaked, but it didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a place I was passing through on the way to something bigger. Something better. I stopped waiting for an apology from Nathan. I stopped checking his social media. I stopped wondering whether Isabel had ever figured it out. None of it mattered now. One evening, Lena and I sat on the cracked steps outside the Forge, watching the sunset paint the sky in strokes of orange and gold. "You know," she said, nudging my arm, "you could have taken him to court. You could have dragged him through the mud." I nodded. I could have. But then I'd still be tangled in his story. She smiled, proud. "Instead, you wrote your own." I looked at the sign above the doorway, hand-painted in bold white letters, "The Forge Collective, made in the fire." Because that's what we were, every woman who walked through those doors. Forged by fire, tempered by pain, sharpened by survival. We didn't shatter. We shaped. I still had hard days. I still had nights where I stared at the ceiling and thought about the years I lost, the pieces of myself I'd bartered away just to keep someone else afloat. But now I also had mornings filled with laughter, classrooms filled with possibility, and women who looked me in the eye and said, "I didn't think I could do this." But I did. And I'd smile and say, "Yeah, I didn't think I could either." But here we are. I didn't hear from Nathan for weeks after the video went viral. I wasn't waiting for a message, not really. But every time my phone buzzed, a flicker of anticipation moved through me, quick, sharp, then gone. It was like muscle memory. Old instincts I hadn't yet broken. The silence itself was loud and telling. Then, one morning, Lena called. "Have you seen it?" she asked, without saying hello. "Seen what?" "Check the university board. Or Twitter. Or, just check anything. His fellowship's gone." I sat up straight in bed, heart suddenly racing. "What do you mean gone?" She read the headline aloud. "Hospital withdraws offer following allegations of misconduct." There was no name, but everyone knew. The internet had already filled in the blanks. The video of my speech was still making the rounds, and with every new view came a fresh wave of accountability. He'd lost the dream job. The post-grad opportunity he once said would set him up for life. I expected to feel triumphant, maybe even smug. But mostly, I felt detached. Like I was watching a fire burn in the distance, and all I could do was acknowledge the heat, then turn away. Lena sighed. Isabel's family has gone radio silent. They unfollowed each other on social media. She deleted all the engagement photos. I raised an eyebrow. Wow. Yeah. And you'll love this. He texted me last night. Said he didn't expect things to spiral. That's the word he used. Spiral. Like it all just happened to him. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I got up, made coffee, and let the steam warm my fingers. Then I checked my phone. Sure enough, there it was, a message from Nathan, sitting quietly between bank notifications and a delivery update. Nathan, I never thought you'd actually leave. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of the lies or betrayal. Just disbelief that I'd finally done what I should have done long ago, walked away. I stared at it, then locked my phone and slid it face down on the counter. He was unraveling. And I wasn't going to catch him. The next day, I met Lena for lunch at a little hole-in-the-wall diner where we used to study in college. The same place I'd once waited tables just to cover rent. I sat across from her now in a clean shirt and jeans without holes, small things, but they mattered. He thought I'd stay, I said quietly. He counted on it. Lena nodded. He always did. You were his net. And when you finally moved, he fell. I stirred my iced tea slowly. Part of me thought I'd feel sorry for him. That I'd cave. That I'd respond and comfort him. But now I just feel done. Like whatever he tries to say, it's too late. Because it is, she said. You don't owe him rescue. I looked out the window, watching people pass on the sidewalk, faces I didn't know, stories I'd never hear. And yet I was finally starting to feel like I had one of my own. One that wasn't tied to someone else's ambition. The Forge was expanding. We were setting up a second classroom. A donor had offered to sponsor a workshop series. Women were calling daily, asking how to join. My name wasn't trending anymore, but it was being passed from one hand to the next in community centers and group chats and whispered conversations that began with, "She gets it." And Nathan? He was just a chapter I'd closed. I didn't reply to his text. He didn't get to have the last word. I did. It arrived on a Tuesday. I found it tucked between flyers and a bill for internet service I barely used. A plain white envelope, my name written in Nathan's handwriting, slanted, clean, still familiar enough to stop my breath for a second. No return address. No embellishment. Just Elena in blue ink. For a moment, I debated throwing it away unread. But curiosity won, or maybe closure did. I slid my thumb under the flap and pulled out a single folded sheet. No apologies in the subject line. No desperate plea. Just words, neat and small on the page, like he'd tried to contain the damage with careful ink. Elena. I've started this letter a dozen times and still don't know how to begin, except to say I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry people say when they're caught, but the kind that sits in your chest and keeps you awake at night. I've been carrying it for weeks. I should have said it years ago. What I did to you, what I took from you, was unforgivable. You gave me everything. Your time, your money, your belief in me when I didn't believe in myself. You worked yourself raw to lift me up. And when it was my turn to stand beside you, I vanished. Worse, I erased you. I told myself lies to justify it. That we'd grown apart. That I was under pressure. That I deserved a clean slate. But none of that excuses the truth. I betrayed you. I used you as a ladder, and when I reached the top, I kicked it away. You didn't deserve that. You deserved recognition. You deserved a future we built together. I see that now. And I see how much I failed you, not just in the end, but in the years I let you carry everything alone. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know that you were never invisible to me, even if I acted like you were. You were the reason I made it through school. You were the one holding me together. I was too weak to admit it then. I hope you're proud of who you are now. I've seen what you're doing with the Forge. It's powerful. It's honest. It's more meaningful than anything I've built. You deserve to be the center of your own story, Elena. I'm sorry it took losing you for me to see it. Nathan. I read it once. Then again. My eyes didn't blur. My hands didn't shake. It was strange, reading the words I had once begged for in silence, finally written down when I no longer needed them. There was truth in the letter, real truth. Painful and too late, but real nonetheless. And maybe that mattered in some way. Maybe not for him, but for me. I folded the letter and slipped it into a small wooden box I kept on my shelf. Inside were mementos of the old life, things I couldn't throw away but no longer clung to. The lease agreement with my name on it. My dad's pond watch receipt. The first flyer for the forge. And now, this letter. A quiet end. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. His chapter in my life had ended. I had already begun writing the next one. The ribbon was a bold, fiery red. I tied it myself that morning, hands slightly trembling as I smoothed it across the entrance of the new Forge Collective building. It stretched proudly across the wide double doors of what had once been an abandoned train station, its bones weary, but strong, much like the women who would soon walk through it. 6 months ago, this place was crumbling. Ivy-covered brick. Rusted pipes. The kind of space people forgot about or avoided. But I saw something different. I saw potential. Foundation. The start of a bigger story. And now, with sunlight filtering through refurbished windows and chairs lined up neatly on the polished floor, we were ready. The forge had outgrown the garage. What started as a handful of women in a dusty room had become something louder, something necessary. Our waiting list had tripled. More volunteers, more classes, more space. Those were good problems to have. A donor who'd watched my story unfold online reached out with a check and a simple message: make it last. So I did. I walked to the podium as people gathered, my heels tapping against the tiled floor. The crowd wasn't enormous, maybe 50 people, but it felt vast in its importance. Local reporters with cameras. Community leaders with clipboards. Women in work boots and suits. Students with notebooks. People who believed in what we were building. Lena stood in the front row, grinning like a proud stage mom. Behind her, Yvonne, the first woman to ever show up to the forge, stood with her daughter, both wearing matching shirts that read "Forged, Not Broken." My chest tightened at the sight. I took a breath and leaned into the microphone. Thank you all for being here today. For those who don't know me, my name is Elena Moore. I started the Forge because I once forgot my worth. I spent years giving everything to someone else's future while losing sight of my own. And when that future collapsed, I didn't recognize myself anymore. I paused, the silence reverent still. But pain taught me something. It taught me that being invisible doesn't mean being weak. That sacrifice, when unacknowledged, still carries weight. And that there's power in reclaiming your voice. I looked out at the crowd, at the women holding each other's hands, at the younger girls wide-eyed with curiosity. You don't need degrees or suits to have value, I continued. You need grit. You need a chance. And you need someone to believe in you, especially when you're not ready to believe in yourself yet. A ripple of quiet agreement moved through the room. That's what we do here. At the Forge, we don't just teach job skills. We teach how to stand taller, how to speak louder, how to know that you matter. Whether you're changing an alternator, negotiating a lease, or telling your story for the first time, we're here to say, you are always enough. Applause erupted, not thunderous but heartfelt. And that meant more. I stepped down from the podium and turned toward the doors. Lena handed me the oversized scissors we'd joked about for weeks. You ready? She whispered. I nodded, and together, with 2 of our students on either side of me, we cut the ribbon. Cameras flashed. People clapped. And just like that, the new forge was open. Inside, we'd kept the charm of the old station, arched ceilings, exposed beams, glass walls, but infused it with warmth. Hand-painted murals done by local artists. A library filled with donated books, toolkits on open shelves, ready to be used. A childcare corner with toys and beanbags. The classrooms were lined with whiteboards, laptops, and materials for every kind of workshop imaginable. The kitchen buzzed with laughter as we served food, catered by one of our own, Miriam, who had started her own business after taking our budgeting and entrepreneurship classes. She made sure everyone left with leftovers. "No one walks out hungry," she said, passing me a plate with extra cornbread. As the evening went on, people explored. Volunteers explained programs. Past students gave mini tours. A few women quietly slipped me thank you notes. Others asked how they could help. And in one quiet corner, I saw a teenage girl standing with her mom, staring at the photo wall we'd hung by the entrance. It showed Forge women in action, fixing engines, painting walls, laughing during finance lessons. At the center was a photo of me holding up the first sign we ever made, the Forge Collective, built for us. "That's you," the girl said, pointing. Her voice was soft but certain. I smiled. "Yeah, that's me." Her eyes were curious. "Did you build all of this?" "Not alone," I said. "But I started it. After I lost everything I thought I needed." Her mother looked over, visibly emotional. "You gave us hope, Elena. Before this, I didn't know where to go. You reminded me that it's not too late." I blinked back the heat in my eyes. It's never too late. That's the point. As the sun dipped below the city's skyline, casting golden light across the wide station windows, I stepped outside for a moment of air. The streets buzzed faintly in the distance, but inside me, everything felt still. Anchored. For so long, I'd been defined by what I gave away. My energy, my dreams, my time. But now? I was defined by what I was building. By what I refused to let die in me. Lena joined me on the steps, leaning her shoulder into mine. "You did it," she said quietly. I nodded. "No, we did." She looked out at the building, glowing from within. "You think Nathan knows?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. "But it doesn't matter anymore." It was true. He could watch from afar. Or not. I didn't need his validation. His voice no longer echoed in my head when I made decisions. He wasn't the sun I orbited around. I had become my own center. Inside, a new group of women gathered in a circle, their laughter spilling through the open door. Music played softly. Someone turned on the projector for the first video workshop. Life was happening. Real, messy, hopeful life. And I stood at the edge of it. Not as someone clinging to the past, but as someone shaping the future. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need him to say my name. I had spoken it loud enough for the world to hear. Elena Moore. Founder. Builder. Survivor. And nothing about me was invisible anymore. The lake was quiet, still as glass, its surface catching the last streaks of sunlight like a mirror someone had gently laid down across the earth. I stood at the edge with my boots pressed into soft dirt, watching a group of Forge students huddled around an engine on the makeshift outdoor workbench we'd built last month. They laughed as they worked, sleeves rolled, smudges of grease on their forearms, shoulders bumping playfully as they debated the next step. A few feet away, a little girl, probably 8 or 9, balanced on a stone, mimicking their movements with a toy wrench. I smiled at her confidence. That's what this place had become. A space where no one waited to be invited, no one questioned if they belonged. They just stepped in, tools in hand, and started building. "All right, give it a go," Yvonne called, stepping back from the engine. The others moved too, watching with anticipation. One of them, Samira, reached over and turned the key. For a second, silence. Then the engine sputtered, coughed, and roared to life. They cheered like they'd just won the lottery. I found myself clapping before I realized it, the sound lost in their celebration. Samira turned, beaming. "It works." I gave her a thumbs up, my chest tight with quiet pride. Not just for the engine, but for what it meant. A machine brought back to life. A woman realizing her own capability. A reminder that broken doesn't mean beyond repair. That had become our rhythm at the Forge, breaking down what held us back, rebuilding with new strength, and running full throttle toward something better. After the cheers died down, I sat on the edge of the dock, boots dangling just above the water. A soft breeze danced across the surface, carrying the scent of pine and engine oil, strangely comforting now. My notebook rested beside me, filled with sketches for new classes, ideas from students, quotes that had moved me. One in particular stood out. Sometimes the legacy we build is the one no one sees coming. I never planned to build a legacy. I just wanted to stop hurting, to stop disappearing. But what I created in that pursuit, what we all created, had taken on a life of its own. The forge was no longer just mine. It belonged to the women who ran the workshops, who led morning meetings, who walked in afraid and walked out fierce. It belonged to the next generation, the daughters watching their mothers fix wiring, apply for business licenses, speak without shrinking. It belonged to every woman who had ever been told she was too soft, too tired, too late. Lena joined me on the dock, slipping off her shoes and sitting cross-legged beside me. "They're asking if we can do a field trip to the city junkyard," she said with a grin. "Apparently someone wants to gut an old bus and turn it into a mobile workshop." I laughed. "That sounds like them." She nudged my knee. "You should be proud, you know." "I am." But pride didn't feel like a parade. It felt like this, a peaceful sunset, the hum of laughter behind me, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I no longer needed to prove my worth to anyone. "You ever think about what comes next?" she asked. I looked out at the lake, the sky painted with purples and burnt orange. "Not in the same way I used to. I'm not chasing something anymore. I'm just becoming." She was quiet for a beat. Then, "That letter from Nathan, you ever respond?" I shook my head. "No need. He said what he needed to say. And I heard it. That's enough." I didn't carry bitterness anymore. Just clarity. He was a chapter. A long one, but not the final one. And maybe that was the legacy too. Not what we lose, but what we build in the aftermath. Not how we're remembered by those who left us behind, but by those who grew beside us. The engine roared again behind us, louder this time, steady and sure. I smiled. I was once the woman behind his degree. But now, I was the woman behind my own name.